Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we are seeing another Total War Warhammer 3 battle replay. Again, minor settlement battle. You guys are probably familiar with this map already. She's a beaut. And here it is Tzeentch versus Ogre Kingdoms. And today the player is actually the one attacking, which is interesting. So you can see two Doom Knights being moved around there. If we use my big cursor, hooray, big cursor. We have Kairos Fate Weaver leading the army. We have a Cultist of Tzeentch, which has the Lord of Fire, which is very, very handy. We also have the Iridescent Horror, that has the Lord of Tzeentch. We have a Soul Grinder of Tzeentch, which has better range and lower melee attack when compared to the Khorne variant. Then we have the two Doom Knights that we saw earlier. They can Vanguard, which is very scary for a unit that is that heavily armoured and, you know, just lethal, frankly. They're a really good brawling unit. To have that kind of maneuverability on something that can brawl like that is amazing. We then have the Exalted Pink Horrors of Tzeentch, some Pink Horrors of Tzeentch over here, blue Horrors on the end. We then have the Exalted Flamer, I believe. I think Exalted is the adjective they go for with the big Flamer. Anyway, we also have some Chaos Spawn of Tzeentch there, two Forsaken of Tzeentch, and two units of Flamers of Tzeentch. And then we have the two Screamers of Tzeentch that are also flying units. So a lot of utility, a huge amount of ranged, because all of the Horrors have ranged attacks, the Flamers have ranged attacks, and the Soul Grinder has ranged attacks. Then, pretty much the rest of the army, well, we got the Forsaken, I guess, outliers, but basically the army either has ranged attacks, magic, or can fly. It's one of those. Sometimes several of those things, such as the Iridescent Horror is on a chariot so it can fly, and it's got a missile attack, and it's got magic. It does all the things. It's pretty great. So, the Ogres, there's a Lead Belchers lying in wait, but Lead Belchers I don't think have much armour. I think it's 30. Just Ogres generally don't have a huge amount of armour. They hit like absolute trucks, but they are quite soft. They are quite soft, so a lot of missile fire of any sort will get a lot of hits, and it'll do a lot of damage very quickly. That's the thing with Ogres. Low armor, so yeah, they can be whittled down pretty easily with ranged fire, but also they hit like absolute trucks, and not even charge defense can slow them down because they can retain half of their charge bonus, thanks to their Ogre charge ability, even against braced units with charge defense. So they can get through the front line so quickly that the back line doesn't actually have time to, you know, to slaughter them all. But these Ogres are on the defensive, and so they're not really attacking as aggressively as you really want from an Ogre army. Which I think will make defending as Ogres a little bit more challenging against factions like Tzeentch that have just this overabundance of ranged units, which I think will be really fun. I think it's a really cool dynamic. I think it's something you really have to watch out for if you're playing as the Ogres. You're going to have to be quite aggressive at all times, I think. Well, potentially. Potentially. It really depends on what the enemy's got going for it. But, yeah, at the moment, against Tzeentch, I don't think they're in a good spot. Noblars obviously aren't going to hold up very well against all the various flames. And here, the Doom Knights are coming in, and the Doom Knights getting the charge on those Ogres, those pretty soft Ogres with not very high armour. They're going to take a lot of punishment very quickly. So most of the Ogre units are trying to retreat. You see there is an Ogre Giant there. Well, just a giant. It's, you know, not an Ogre Giant, it's a giant. Different species, but, you know, it belongs to the Ogre faction right now, so I'm going to call it an Ogre Giant. So it's lumbering back towards the middle. I can't wait to see that getting attacked by all the various flamers and things. Although here, the spawn of Tzeentch, obviously they're unbreakable, which makes them a very useful front line, but they also have a lot of mass and size, so they do just kind of plug up the front line quite a lot, which, you know, for pinning enemies down for a long period of time, it's really handy to have like an unbreakable fat unit like that. But it does block a lot of missile attacks, so it's not necessarily the most useful thing in the world. So here you can see the Doom Knights of Tzeentch and a bunch of Flamers came in, and they're doing a lot of damage to those Bull Ogres. Oh, Giant looks like it's headed to go and help out there. But there's a lot of flamers coming up that have a lot of very good missile attacks that can do a lot of damage to it, so that's not going to look good. Ooh. And here you can see there is some construction going on. The ogres seem to be falling back in a lot of flanks to try and defend the centre, which is very cool to see the AI do that, to recognise that its plan of standing by the gates isn't working, and consolidating closer to the centre of the battle, which I think is rather cool. It is nice to see that kind of reaction. So Chaos Fate Weaver is about to use the blue fire of Tzeentch. So let's see that in action. A awesome looking, almost like a mortar of magic missiles. A huge amount of missiles being fired, which is very cool to see. I think that might have killed a couple of models there. You know, damage focused on very few models, but quite a bit of damage. Interesting to see that against other sorts of units, to see how well it stacks up against sort of big units of infantry or just like a single target. I think against single targets is going to be very devastating. So the Doom Knights can obviously just go straight into the middle. They could fly over everything else. And their shields have recharged. You may have noticed the blue bar at the top of all the Tzeentch units. That is in fact their barrier. So that is an extra health pool that they get, which is very small. It's not a lot, but it recharges. So it's temporary health that recharges. It's much like a shield in most, you know, first-person shooters and things. It's kind of crazy, and that'll just recharge when they're out of combat. It's kind of nuts, and I love it. I think it's really cool. It really promotes the sort of hit-and-run tactic, and it, you know, promotes sort of magic nonsense. So I like that too. So the Cultist of Tzeentch is trying to take out that scrap launcher, which was one use for him. And here, there's a lot of magic, right? There's a lot of spellcasters. But Tzeentch can clearly get a lot of magic, because, you know, some spells have been launched, but there's still 51 in the tank, you can see in the bottom. Right here, you can see there's 51 winds of magic in the tank. Now remember, it used to be, in Warhammer 2, that you'd max out at 30, and then you'd have to spend some for the reserves to start filling it up again. So having that much larger pool in the tank means you can use a bunch more spells consecutively before you have to wait for it to recharge, which I think is very cool. Because there's a lot of spells which, frankly, were too expensive to be viable all that often. You know, it'd kind of ruin your ability to be flexible in the moment, because you would use all of your spells on a single spell overcasted, and that would be it. Then you'd have to wait around for ages before you could do any of the smaller utility spells. So I kind of like there's more in the tank. It gives you more flexibility as how you want to use the magic. And you can see Tzeentch seems to be getting a heck of a lot of magic. So 60, I believe, is the cap now. So I don't think it's going to get any higher than that. So the player should be using it. Should be using it. There's a lot of magic at their disposal. A heck of a lot of it. So you'll notice down below, you can see just here, the Chaos Spawn have almost no health left. They are getting finished off pretty quickly. Poor things. And it seems every flank so far has collapsed. The AI is building a barricade there, but there's no units to man that barricade. So it's not really getting in the way of anything. So here a breath spell is coming in, and that might seem a bit daft, but there are ranged attacks coming in too, and I'm pretty sure that spell does confer a fire weakness. So it is at least doing that, even if it's not the most opportune. Oh, go on, just hit him with the piercing bolts or something. Something big, big piercing damage. That's what I want to see from the cultist. So you can see the Gorgers are currently, well, gorging on those blue horrors. Are they blue horrors? Yes, those are blue horrors. But the blue horrors are just keeping it busy while they get singed. Mournfang cavalry running in into those exalted pink horrors. Actually, the exalted pink horrors do seem to be quite good in melee as well. They're a hybrid unit, They're not going to go down without a fight, and although they don't have a huge amount of armor-piercing damage, as far as I'm aware, that again doesn't really matter too much against Ogre Kingdom units that don't have a huge amount of armor. And now Kairos Fate Weaver, he's going to be flying into the centre. And it does look a little bit like those Noblars have actually got huge value against those Doom Knights, because those Doom Knights have just been sat idle for a while. It does look like the cultist escaped somehow, which I think is rather impressive, that the cultist of Tzeentch managed to escape that. He was really pinned down. But no, it worked out alright. Those Noblars got pretty much wiped out in a single go. And now a army ability is being kicked off to create more magic. And let's be fair, we're seeing the player use a heck of a lot of magic right now, but he still has so much in the tank. Tzeentch's ability to get magic out of nowhere is amazing. It is fantastic. We are seeing so much magic use, and it just keeps filling the tank back up, which I think is really fun. It means you get to really play as Tzeentch, you know? I think it's really fun. It feels really appropriate for the faction, but also super powerful. Super powerful. But what I do like is with Tzeentch, with that barrier that they've got, that sort of promotes cycle charging and these sort of delayed encounters, you know, these little hit-and-run tactics. You want to make the battle last as long as possible. That obviously means you have more and more time to use all the spells at your command. So, against Tzeentch, if you have an incredibly aggressive army, and you don't let them retreat, and you don't let them get their barriers back up, and you don't let the battle drag on, then it doesn't matter how much magic you have in reserves. You're not going to be able to use it all before your army is wiped out, if the enemy player is aggressive enough. So that is something they're going to have to deal with, you know, they are quite squishy. I've been constantly saying how squishy the ogres are, but Tzeentch are just as squishy. But they don't really, it doesn't really matter that they don't have a lot of armor in this matchup, because the ogres have armor piercing on every unit. They are not wanting for armor piercing, so why spend the extra expense on armor piercing damage on your units? Sorry, on armor on your units, when everything is going to be armor piercing anyway, right? And Tzeentch don't really have that problem, because they don't have a huge amount of armor on their units, except the Doom Knights here have a heck of a high armor value, actually, but they bring so much other utility, it's still useful to have them. So, the siege of the center capture point is beginning. There are some towers built there. You can see a tower in the middle, built by the ogres to try and help out. And there's also a barricade on the other side. Oh, no, there's not, but there's a spot there where a barricade can be built. So we'll see if that happens. The Stone Horn has been in combat, though I haven't seen it. I'm sure you'll see it in the cinematic shots that I've been throwing in here. I do that later, so who knows? Who knows? I remember the cinematic shots being brilliant in this replay in particular, which is why I'm happy to be casting it. But, yeah, there's a lot of units here. And I don't think the ogres, I don't think the AI has really known how to combat Tzeentch. And I think that's just AI in general. It's not very good at knowing when it needs to be super aggressive. You know, ranged attacks are always beneficial here. So this is no real change from previous Total Wars. It is quite easy to exploit these units from a distance. Which is a shame. I'd like to see the AI be a little bit more adaptive to those situations. And just an incredible amount of fire coming from the skies there. It's like piercing bolts, but it just goes on forever. It's so cool. Such a cool spell there. And that blue that stains the ground. Looks like paintball splatters or something. It's great. So here you can see Scrag the Slaughterer is now getting fairly surrounded, but those Saber Tusks are going to be very useful here. The Saber Tusks, they have big weapon damage, and they're very quick. Something like that, I think, would be brilliant against Tzeentch, but they do rampage. And that is a big problem. Them rampaging is not going to be good. You do not want that to happen with Tzeentch. You know, all of that ranged fire can get them to rampage. They're going to attack any old nonsense. You can throw your Doom Knights at them or something. And then you're not going to be able to get on all those juicy targets in the back line. Or I guess the front line is Tzeentch. Everything is quite juicy. You can see Kairos is trying to fight Scrag, but Kairos isn't really a melee fighter. You can see from his stats, 35 melee attack, 20 melee defense. It's quite pathetic. It is really quite bad. He shouldn't be fighting in melee. I think he might be getting a little bit cocky, given how well all the other battles are doing. But now that he's proccing all of his abilities and he's got other troops in the fray, I don't think things are going to look too good for Scrag. See, the balance of power at the top of the screen is shifting further and further in Kairos' favour, and that is a victory. So, absolutely fantastic. Love Tzeentch. I think they're a really interesting faction, but I think they will struggle against more aggressive players. Certainly more aggressive than the AI seems to be able to be. But hey, that's AI for you. So guys, if you enjoyed this, comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.